All right, before we start the podcast, let me just lay down some ground rules right away. Since we're going to be comparing the era of Arch Enemy with Angela Gossow and then the current era with Alissa White-Goltz, hope I pronounced that correctly, what we are not going to do is talk about these women's physical appearances. It's 2022, and as enlightened metalheads, we're not going to do that. Besides, the most attractive member of Arch Enemy is and always has been Daniel Erlandson anyway. Dude, he's older than me. How does he still look this good? He must be a vampire. Welcome, metalheads, to Heavy Metal Philosophy. I'm your host, your sommelier of extreme metal and blue-collar philosopher, John Barbas. Make sure you stick around to the end of the episode for this week's Riff of the Week. Now, this past week, Arch Enemy just released their new album, Deceivers. If you listened to the podcast before, then you know that back in the day, I was a huge Arch Enemy fan. Like 2010 era, I just could not get enough of Arch Enemy. I was in love with Angela Gossow. I just thought they were the heaviest. They had the coolest guitar theatrics. They had the coolest look. I just loved the band. And after Angela left, I was like, okay, what's going to happen? And then Alissa joined, and I was like, okay, cool, another screamer. And their next album, it's good. It just wasn't the same for me anymore. And it seemed just a little bit different, and I kind of fell off a little bit. Well, again, if you've listened to this podcast regularly, you know that I went and saw Behemoth and Arch Enemy in concert, and Alissa totally won me over. She's one of the best front people in all of rock and roll. It felt like a big rock and roll show with the way that she commanded the crowd and owned the stage, and the guitar heroics. You know, fucking Michael Amott and Jeff Loomis. I mean, legendary guitar players. It just felt like a big arena. Like, look at these rock star guitar players. Look at this rock star front person. And I was like, wow, I'm so impressed with their live show. I'm probably back on the Arch Enemy train. I'm really disappointed that I didn't get to ever see them with Angela, especially considering how much I loved that era. So I can't compare if the live show was better or not, but that show was so good. I was like, all right, maybe I'm back on. And they've got a new album coming out, so maybe this will be the album that puts me back on the Arch Enemy train. And it didn't, but it did do something profound. It definitely changed the way I look at the new era of Arch Enemy. And I've really been considering this a lot lately with other bands, because, you know, last week we talked about the new Amon Amarth, and it's just not as brutal as they used to be back around Twilight of the Thunder God. You know, there's a sea shanty on the album. Now look, we all love sea shanties. It's a fun drinking song. I like it a lot. It's just not brutal. And then we talked about Metallica and Load. You know, I love that album. And I said, if any other band had released the album Load, we would be regaling it with praises and hailing it as a masterpiece of rock and roll. But since Metallica released it, we're like, what the fuck is this? This isn't heavy metal. What are you doing? So I've always kind of wondered about albums that, like, again, Amon Amarth, this new Amon Amarth album, The Great Heathen Army. If another band had released that, I would have heard it and said, damn, that's some cool Viking metal that sounds kind of similar to Amon Amarth. I like this. But because Amon Amarth released it, I'm like, man, it's not as good as Twilight. I mean, but that's not really fair. It's not really fair, because what album is as good as Twilight of the Thunder God? Right? So I've been really grappling with, how do we handle that? You know, it seems to be an anomaly in metal when you have a band like Cannibal Corpse that just releases banger after banger after banger. You know, how can a band live up to that? And this new Arch Enemy record, Deceivers, it's very different. It's very just infused with like 80s guitar riffs and power metal, like Triumph. And then, of course, there's still like heavy parts and death metal screaming and just guitar pyrotechnics all over the place. But it's definitely like triumphant and epic. I'm telling you, it's damn near power metal. And y'all know how I feel about power metal. I don't like it. I don't like that not for me. I like, oh, that's what I like. And she doesn't quite do the full-on power metal scream. The wail is what we'll call it. But it's pretty fucking close. It's like, it's the power metal wail, but with a little bit of grr to it. And you put that over the epic guitars and stuff that's going behind it, and it's like, dude, that's power metal. And so now I'm looking at Arch Enemy, I'm like, I really have been wrong to judge them the way that I've judged them over the past 2 records. I felt like it just wasn't as brutal without Angela and without Michael's brother Christopher, and maybe I shouldn't be judging it that way. I should be judging it like it's a totally different band. I mean, yes, you still got the same rhythm section, you still got Michael, but to me it sounds like a different band. And like I said about those other bands, if another band had released Deceivers, I would be like, damn, this is a cool record. And so why can't I, in good faith, give Arch Enemy that same sort of benefit of the doubt? Why do I have to compare them to, the Nemesis era or, the Anthems of Rebellion? That's a different band with completely different members. I shouldn't compare those anymore. I should judge everything that Arch Enemy does from here on out as its own thing. Like the next Arch Enemy record, I should compare it not to Wages of Sin, but to Deceivers, because that's the band they are now. I don't know. What do you guys think? Are there other bands like that have this like standout record amongst their catalog where you're like, that one was not really what I would wanted out of you guys? And how do you think about that philosophically? Because they're not writing these albums for me as an individual. I've already said I'm more of the brutal metal, less of the power metal sort of guy. They're writing what they want to write. And so I've really had to think about that a lot since I took that writing position at Metal Digest, because now part of my job is to review albums that I don't like. And again, if you're a longtime subscriber of this podcast, you know that my policy here on Heavy Metal Philosophy is not to review albums from genres that I don't like, because I'm not going to do it fairly. I didn't review the new Dream Theater record last year because I fucking hate Dream Theater. Not them as people. I respect them as musicians. I just don't like listening to that music. It's too pretty. It's not heavy enough. And they won a fucking Grammy for that record. So it shows what I know. It must be a great record, right? But if you're a Dream Theater fan, you can tell me if it holds up to the rest of their catalog or not. I'm not a Dream Theater fan, so I can't adequately make that call. Well, now it's my job. I have to review albums from genres that I don't like. And thankfully, the creative director gave me some resources to read to really help, guide me on how I should do that. And so, again, that's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about how do I judge these bands that are making moves that in particular, my taste, I don't like. I don't like power metal. And this new Arch Enemy, it's power metal with a death metal vocalist. It's very pretty. There's lots of sections where Alissa sings cleanly and there's spoken word. It's just really soft. And I don't mean soft like it's not heavy. I mean soft as like an adjective. Like, you can look at their music video. There's scenes in the music video for Handshake from Hell, and you've got Alissa like silhouetted like an angel in the sky. And I just don't think that Angela would have done that. Angela would have been there not in like a glamorous outfit with her hair dyed blue and meticulously, braided and tassels hanging from her arms. And Angela would have been there with a tank top, a little bit of paint under her eye, just dirty death metal, just screaming to the mic. And that's the sort of shit that I like. Other people, especially if you're a huge Arch Enemy fan, you need to let me know in the comments. Other people might say, no, the Alissa era of the band is better because Alissa is a more diverse vocalist. But maybe I didn't want that diversity. Maybe I want just growl in my face, and also thematically, it's a lot different. And this is why I say that it's a different band now. Thematically, all of those old Angela records, there was so many songs that were about anarchy and, their atheism, against religion. Like one of my favorite songs from that era is No Gods, No Masters. That's that kind of shit I like. And the new era of Arch Enemies, it seems much more personal, much more to do with the emotions of, I assume Alissa is writing these lyrics. I don't know that to be sure, but I think that's a good assumption considering that the themes of these albums definitely shifted once the singer position changed. So I think probably Alissa is writing these lyrics, and it's much more personal now. There's a lot of like, you can do it, empowering, triumphant anthems of like, the world is yours, That's cool. All right, the Angela era had its fair share of anthems as well. So, maybe that's the influence of the original band members. I'm not so sure. So that's the way that I would review Deceivers. It's would be a great record if you don't expect it to be the old Arch Enemy. Because, the guitar on this, if you're a guitar nerd like me, you're going to listen to this multiple times and just go, fucking Michael and Jeff Loomis are wizards. And I just stand in awe of their technical mastery and their creativity. How are they still writing fresh metal, doing that old school metal, like arpeggiating every chord sort of style that they have? I don't know, but they're doing it, and their tone is impeccable. The harmonies are always cool. They're always like trading off solos. I love it. And that but is the part that I feel is unfair. And I want to ask you all, like, what do you think? How do you handle that when you're a fan of a band and you go, oh yeah, this new one's good, but I'm a little anxious that that's probably going to be the way I feel about the new Behemoth record, considering the singles that I've heard so far. We shall see. I'll be sure to cover that when it comes. We've got a stacked slate of new metal releases coming over the next couple of weeks, and I cannot wait to bring it to you every weekend exclusively on YouTube. I break down my top 5 metal releases of the weekend. So if you want to stay up to date with the crushing new metal that comes out every weekend, hit subscribe on YouTube. I would greatly appreciate it. And this podcast, as always, is free on every platform that I can get it on every Tuesday. Doesn't have to be on YouTube. If you have an opinion on this matter, please comment. If you're listening audio only, you can comment on my social media. All the links are in the description below, including links to my columns on Metal Digest, which will only grow in number over time. So thank you so much for looking at that. And then we'll just end with the riff of the week. For the riff of the week, I'm going to pick a standout from the Arch Enemy record Deceiver called Handshake with Hell. And I think it perfectly encapsulates what I mean. How I feel that this once melodic death metal band has become more of a power metal, epic metal with death metal vocals sort of band. It just really showcases the direction that the band is going in now. It's very pretty, but it's still heavy at times. So check that out. Remember, read philosophy, listen to metal. I love you.